truly know yourself is one of the most profound and most difficult psychological tasks a human being can undertake. Many people assume self-knowledge comes naturally, that simply living your life automatically reveals who you are. In reality, psychology shows the opposite. The mind is exceptionally skilled at hiding itself from itself. We develop blind spots, defense mechanisms, social masks, and narratives that protect our ego, but distort our truth. As Carl Jung famously warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The psychology of self-knowledge goes far beyond surface-level traits like personality types, strengths, or preferences. It involves confronting uncomfortable emotions, recognizing recurring behavioral patterns, understanding unconscious motivations, and observing how past experiences silently shape present decisions. True self-knowledge requires the courage to question your beliefs, the humility to accept your flaws, and the awareness to notice when your mind is rationalizing instead of revealing. Modern psychology, from cognitive science to depth psychology, reveals that much of what drives us operates beneath conscious awareness. Our fears, desires, habits, and even our sense of identity are often constructed responses to earlier conditioning rather than deliberate choices. To know yourself, then, is not to invent an identity, but to uncover what has been influencing you all along. This exploration is not about self-criticism or self-obsession. It is about clarity. When you understand yourself deeply, you gain emotional intelligence, psychological freedom, and the ability to respond rather than react. In a world that constantly tells you who to be, truly knowing yourself becomes a quiet but radical act of power. If you're serious about understanding how your mind actually works, subscribe. This channel isn't about motivation or surface-level advice. It's about psychology, neuroscience, and self-mastery, breaking unconscious patterns, decoding emotions, and developing real mental clarity. New videos are released for people who think deeply, question identity, and refuse to live on autopilot. Subscribe if you want to. If that's not you, this channel won't resonate. But if it is, welcome. Now let's get into it. 1. Self-knowledge begins where comfort ends. True self-knowledge is not formed in moments of ease, praise, or self-validation. It begins precisely at the edge of discomfort, where the mind resists looking and the ego urges avoidance. Positive affirmations may soothe the surface, but they rarely challenge the deeper psychological structures shaping behavior. Psychology reveals that the mind instinctively avoids anything that threatens its self-image, activating defense mechanisms such as denial, rationalization, and projection. These defenses preserve comfort, but they also preserve blindness. When uncomfortable emotions arise, shame, irritation, jealousy, fear, they are often treated as problems to suppress. In reality, they are signals. Discomfort marks the presence of unresolved beliefs, unmet needs, or internal conflicts operating beneath conscious awareness. What triggers you emotionally is rarely about the present moment alone. It is the mind revealing where control still exists. Growth occurs not by escaping discomfort, but by observing it with precision. When you pause instead of reacting, you create psychological distance between awareness and impulse. This allows hidden patterns to surface, why certain words provoke you, why specific situations drain you, or why familiar dynamics repeat. Over time, this observation weakens automatic reactions and strengthens conscious choice. Self-knowledge, then, is not about feeling good. It is about seeing clearly. And clarity often requires the courage to sit with discomfort long enough for truth to reveal itself. 1. Repeated patterns are neural loops. Every habit, recurring relationship dynamic, or repeated emotional reaction is more than coincidence. They are the result of reinforced neural circuits in your brain. Neuroscience shows that the brain is wired to favor repetition. It conserves energy by relying on established pathways rather than creating new ones. This means the choices you make, the arguments you have, and the situations you attract are often guided by automatic neural loops formed over years of experience, learning, and conditioning. True self-knowledge begins when you pause and ask, Why does my brain keep choosing this outcome? This question is not rhetorical. It is the gateway to uncovering unconscious programming. Patterns are messages from the nervous system, pointing to beliefs, fears, and desires that operate beneath conscious awareness. For example, repeatedly attracting certain types of people, procrastinating on important tasks, or responding defensively in the same situations are all evidence of neural circuits shaping your behavior without your conscious input. Observing these patterns allows you to trace the invisible lines of influence that guide your choices. With awareness, you can begin to retrain your neural loops, consciously shift behaviors, and break free from cycles that have long defined your life. True self-knowledge is not only recognizing these loops, it is actively learning to rewrite them. 1. The ego protects, but it also distorts. The ego is often misunderstood as arrogance or selfishness, but its primary function is self-preservation. Neuroscience and psychology reveal that the ego works tirelessly to maintain a coherent sense of identity. It achieves this by rationalizing mistakes, deflecting blame, and even reshaping memories to fit a narrative that feels safe and consistent. In essence, it shields the psyche from experiences that could threaten its stability, giving you the illusion of control and consistency. While this protective mechanism helps maintain psychological equilibrium, it comes at a cost. It blocks self-knowledge. The ego resists anything that challenges its constructed image, whether it's admitting a flaw, facing a fear, or acknowledging a recurring pattern in behavior. As a result, much of your internal life remains filtered, censored, and distorted, leaving unconscious drives and hidden motives unexamined. Truly knowing yourself requires a temporary disarming of this internal guardian. By observing your thoughts, emotions, and impulses without judgment, and without automatically defending your sense of identity, you create space for honest self-examination. This does not weaken you, it strengthens clarity, allowing the mind to see past protective illusions and into the deeper truths that shape behavior and life choices. Self-awareness, therefore, is inseparable from understanding the ego, not erasing it, but seeing how it shapes perception. 1. Emotional reactions are psychological data. Emotions are often misunderstood as obstacles to rational thought or signs of weakness. In reality, neuroscience shows that emotions are critical data points about your inner world. Strong emotional responses, anger, shame, fear, or even intense joy, arise milliseconds before conscious thought, triggered by the brain's limbic system. By the time you think you're reacting, your nervous system has already interpreted the situation and set off a cascade of neural signals. These emotional spikes are not random. They are messages from your subconscious, revealing unmet needs, unresolved wounds, and deeply held values that guide behavior. For instance, sudden irritation might signal a boundary being crossed, while persistent sadness could point to unprocessed past experiences. When you learn to observe emotions without immediately suppressing or judging them, you gain access to this hidden psychological data. Analyzing your emotional responses allows you to identify recurring patterns, hidden motivations, and areas of internal conflict. It transforms reactions from obstacles into tools for self-understanding. The moment you begin to treat emotions as information rather than threats, you shift from being reactive to observant, creating the neural and psychological conditions necessary for true self-awareness and conscious choice. Emotions, then, are not just felt. They are insight waiting to be decoded. 1. Your shadow contains both fear and power. In depth psychology, the shadow represents the parts of yourself you have rejected, denied, or suppressed. Traits deemed unacceptable, uncomfortable, or socially undesirable. Far from disappearing, these hidden aspects continue to influence your behavior, often unconsciously. They emerge in subtle ways, through projection onto others, repeated self-sabotaging behaviors, or intense emotional reactions that feel out of proportion to the situation. The shadow is not merely a repository of fear, shame, or negativity. It also contains untapped potential, hidden talents, and dormant strength, qualities that you may have buried out of fear or insecurity. By refusing to acknowledge the shadow, you allow these suppressed traits to control you indirectly, keeping you trapped in repetitive patterns and emotional turbulence. True self-knowledge requires shadow integration, a deliberate process of recognizing, accepting, and understanding these hidden parts of yourself. Integration does not make you dark or morally compromised. It makes you whole. It transforms what was once a source of inner conflict into a reservoir of personal power and authority. When you confront the shadow, you gain clarity, reduce projection, and reclaim energy previously lost to unconscious conflict. In doing so, you step into authentic self-mastery, where fear and power coexist in conscious balance. 1. Identity is conditioned before it is chosen. Much of what you consider who you are is not fully your own creation. From childhood, your identity is shaped by conditioning, cultural expectations, family dynamics, and early emotional experiences. These influences embed themselves deeply in your neural pathways, creating beliefs, preferences, and behaviors that feel natural, even inevitable, but may not reflect your authentic self. The problem is that most people unconsciously continue living according to this conditioned identity. They follow scripts written by others, seeking approval, avoiding conflict, or repeating familiar patterns that no longer serve them. The ego reinforces these learned behaviors, presenting them as true selfhood, while the authentic self remains obscured beneath layers of socialization and adaptation. True self-knowledge requires disentangling learned identity from authentic self. This involves observing your thoughts, reactions, and desires critically, asking which of them are genuinely yours versus those inherited or imposed by circumstance. It also means confronting the discomfort that arises when familiar beliefs are challenged, because growth always occurs at the edge of certainty. Until this separation occurs, your choices, emotions, and behaviors may continue to be guided by unconscious scripts. When you begin to reclaim authorship, you step into a life defined not by conditioning, but by conscious choice and authentic presence. 1. Awareness creates psychological freedom. Much of human behavior operates on autopilot, driven by unconscious thoughts, habits, and emotional triggers. When actions remain unconscious, they feel inevitable, like life is happening to you rather than through you. Neuroscience shows that these automatic responses are governed by deeply ingrained neural pathways, reinforced over years of repetition, which can make change feel impossible. Awareness is the key that unlocks freedom. By observing your thoughts, emotions, and impulses without judgment, you interrupt these automatic patterns. Psychology confirms that conscious awareness activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, allowing you to pause, reflect, and choose your responses intentionally. This shift transforms behavior from reactionary to deliberate. In this space between stimulus and response, self-knowledge becomes actionable. You begin to understand not just what you do, but why you do it, and gain the ability to change it. Each moment of awareness strengthens the neural circuits of conscious choice, gradually reducing the influence of old, unconscious patterns. Ultimately, awareness is freedom in action. It turns internal observation into external mastery, empowering you to live deliberately, make aligned choices, and move through life guided by conscious intention rather than automatic programming. 1. Knowing yourself changes how you move through the world. True self-knowledge transforms more than just your internal landscape. It reshapes how you navigate the external world. When you understand your thoughts, emotions, and motivations, the constant need for external validation fades. You become less reactive to provocation, criticism, or praise because your sense of self is anchored in awareness rather than in approval. Psychology shows that people who possess deep self-knowledge exhibit heightened discernment. They can read situations, relationships, and intentions with clarity because their perception is not clouded by ego-driven biases or unconscious patterns. This reduces impulsive reactions and increases strategic, thoughtful responses to challenges. As a result, life stops feeling like a performance in which you must prove yourself. Instead, you start aligning your actions with your authentic values, priorities, and purpose. Your presence becomes grounded, calm, confident, and magnetic because it is rooted in truth rather than projection. Decisions become cleaner, relationships more genuine, and opportunities more aligned. Life begins to reflect inner clarity, as each action resonates with conscious choice rather than habit or social conditioning. In essence, knowing yourself is not just internal mastery. It is the art of moving through the world with intention, power, and effortless alignment. Conclusion. Most people live their lives on autopilot, reacting to emotions they don't understand, repeating patterns they didn't choose, defending identities they never questioned. Neuroscience makes one thing clear. If you don't know yourself consciously, your unconscious mind will run your life. But when you observe your thoughts, study your emotions, and confront your patterns, you reclaim authorship of your mind. Clarity replaces confusion. Choice replaces compulsion. And that is what real power looks like.